you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants to this remarkable project. First of all, I would like to thank you for this impressive presentation of your project, and even more importantly, for the courage behind it. You impressively reported of your learnings during the project, and what you're doing is living proof that peace can work. In a world that so often tells us otherwise, you are a bright light. Your work reminds me of a line from a German rock band called the Ärzte, and this may be the first time a rock band has ever been quoted in this distinguished room, but the lyrics are remarkable and they address the youth with this very line. It is not your fault that the world is the way it is. It would only be your fault if you allowed the world to remain that way. Your generation, my generation, the generation of my parents and of your grandparents, all of us were born into circumstances we did not create. But every generation, once it is old enough to speak, to act, to vote, to fight, and yes, to stretch out a hand, has to ask itself, do we build together or do we destroy? What kind of world will we leave to the generation that comes after us? Is it, for example, the return of Realpolitik, as Mr. Ambassador already mentioned it? Well, that could almost be the headline of our time. Hard power instead of soft power. Rearmament instead of multilateralism. And first and foremost, the return of a dangerous idea. I can, therefore I may. And this is a dangerous idea indeed, since the things humanity is capable of doing are becoming ever more extraordinary. Just think of what we can do. We can cure diseases that would have killed people only a few generations ago. We can speak to someone on the other side of the planet within seconds. We can create artificial intelligence, and we can build truly devastating weapons. Humanity can build so much. We can build technologies, institutions, weapons, but when will we finally learn to build lasting peace? To answer this question, let me make quite a leap with you from a German rock band to the Holy Father. In his recently published encyclical Magnificat Humanitas, Pope Leo XIV criticizes the return of Realpolitik, of what he calls a kind of false realism, a way of thinking that war is increasingly presented to us as inevitable, almost as a necessity of our time. He challenges a view of history in which war becomes the normal condition of humanity and peace merely an exception. And he calls it irresponsible when this false realism plants resignation in people's minds, the belief that war is ultimately inevitable, that dialogue is naive, and that lasting peace may be beautiful, but unrealistic. And indeed, we are witnessing a weakening of precisely those institutions that were created after the catastrophes of the last century to resist that very logic. Multilateralism is losing strength, common rules are being questioned. National interests and the right of the stronger are once again gaining ground. And suddenly we find ourselves in a chicken and egg problem. What came first? The weakening of our common institutions or the return of national power politics? What came first, the fear of the other side arming itself, or our own decision to arm? And once such a downward spiral has begun, can it still be stopped? The false realist would probably say no, as if history were nothing more than an unchangeable chain of action and reaction. One impulse inevitably produces the next. Rearmament produces rearmament. Violence produces counter-violence. Mistrust produces mistrust. As if we had no choice. And as if there were no such thing as free will. It is precisely this fatalism that the encyclical rejects. Instead, it offers us a biblical image, the rebuilding of the destroyed city of Jerusalem in the book of Nehemiah. where Jerusalem lies in ruins. And that image is painfully relevant today because people in our own time know what it means to see cities destroyed, homes disappear, families torn apart, and what generations have built lost within a matter of hours. But the story of Nehemiah does not end with destruction. It is a story of rebuilding. And that rebuilding is not accomplished by one great leader alone. It succeeds because many different people take responsibility. They build together with humility and with dignity, understanding each other's views just as you did. To choose building over destruction, that is ultimately an act of free will. And once we begin to speak about building, or chicken and egg problem changes as well. The decisive question is no longer simply what came first, because something always came first. A wound, an attack, a betrayal, an injustice, an act of violence followed by another act of violence. But if we want to rebuild, we cannot remain forever trapped in the question of who started it. At some point, what came first must be followed by forgiveness. And it was already being put in perfect words. It's about fixing the future, not fixing the past. And then an entirely different question arises. What comes first now? My outstretched hand or yours? For me, that is where the great hope embodied in your project becomes visible, and you fantastically outlined it. Peace doesn't mean that we all think alike. It doesn't mean that conflict disappears. And peace does not require us to forget what has happened. But peace does require us to continue seeing the other person as a human being. It requires us to refuse the belief that violence must inevitably produce more violence. It requires us to insist that history is not entirely predetermined, that human beings can choose, that we can rebuild after destruction, that we can extend a hand even when nobody can guarantee that it will be taken. So you have extended a hand, and let me return one last time to the German rock band. It is not your fault that the world is the way it is. And if the world remains as it is, it will not be for lack of your courage to change it. Thank you very much.